Well, hello! Today I kind of want to go over how to creatively answer some of the cards in your collection when things just quite aren't right and you need some adjustment. So I'll talk about ways that have worked for me, but these are by no guarantee going to work for everybody. I'm not even sure if these are the best way I should be doing it. This is just kind of a stream of consciousness, thoughts on how I can potentially help improve your workflow from some of the lessons I've learned a little bit. So this first card, I answered correctly except for the part hormones. I couldn't really remember what the H was. So in this situation, I tend to think it would be a good idea to take the Anking's approach and rate a card as good if you could probably answer it on a test question. I think that's a pretty nice criteria because it excludes cards where you kind of guessed and got it right. So it applies in that situation. Here, I probably would have been able to figure out that, okay, some hormones, if you give to a male, will probably create gynecomastia. I mean, I probably could have got that on a test. The fact that I got all the harder ones, I will take that. So I rated good on this one, so I think this is a situation where you can be a little bit creative in your card answering. So this is another example where I probably could have got this on a test question. So I went ahead and rated it good and gave it this to myself. So I also could have buried the card until the next day if I wanted to kind of just not totally say that I missed it and move it a little bit farther away. I also could have sent it 7 days into the future with the rememorize add-on. Let me show you guys that because that is a wonderful feature. So if you're looking at one, you can hit R on your keyboard and it will bring up this -7, and the -7 will just move it 7 days from now. It won't affect any of the scheduling of the card. It'll just move it 7 days in the future, kind of like repositioning it. So that's really nice because all you have to do is hit R, and it's just kind of an alternative to hitting again, burying it, or whatnot. That's something I use very infrequently, but it's just a nice option if I don't like my other options. Alright, and this is another card where I understood the concept, but I actually didn't quite get it right the first time when I was answering it. So the correct answer is towards here, but I had said away in my mind when I was quickly going through these. But I understood that the infarct was at the very tip of the diamond or the triangle. So here, you understood the concept, so why don't you just give it to yourself here? So I think that's another situation where you can be a little bit creative in your answering. The real purpose of this is just so that you can be a good doctor or a good student and understand what's going on. Being a little bit too rigid, which I have done sometimes in the past with some of my answers, is probably not the best situation. You want to understand what the card's saying and be able to connect it with others. So this is another card that was kind of interesting. I answered hypercontracture in my head for this second part, even though it just said hypercontraction, so it wasn't the best answer ever, but I understood this concept, and on a test, I probably would have been able to pick that out of a multiple choice question. However, it was kind of a bad answer, so I kind of did a middle ground. Instead of saying again, I went ahead and buried it until the next day. So you can do that with just hitting the dash button on your keyboard, and that'll go ahead and bury it just until the next day. So it'll act like it won't mark it or anything. It'll just put it until tomorrow. Yeah. So that's another way to creatively answer your cards. I could have rated it good because I probably would have been able to guess it, but I think it was kind of on the gray zone. I wanted to see this again. I didn't answer the best. It's a particular contraction band necrosis term. Okay, so for this card, I actually just straight messed up. So I answered tuberculosis for this, which is a cause of spontaneous pneumothorax, but it's not the most common cause of secondary. So I messed up, for better or worse. Not sure if this was the right thing to do, but I went ahead and hit the spacebar and kept going because I kind of realized my mistake after I answered it and had moved on to the next card. I'm like, oh no, I actually just missed that last question. So I just kind of was in a rhythm and wanted to keep going. I think this was helpful in this situation. I think it can be healthy to not be perfectionistic and just do good enough, even though it's probably not justified that I kept going, but I did anyway. Okay, so this was a card where I answered facial plethora, which is a kind of edema. Certainly not the same thing, definitely distinct concepts, but I went ahead and answered good. I probably would have been able to guess facial plethora, and I was kind of going through quickly, and I accidentally blurted out the wrong answer. So this one's similar to the one before. I probably would have been able to guess it on a test. So instead of hypoxia in this question, I answered obesity hypoventilation syndrome, which is a particular type of disorder instead of just a general hypoxia, but they were kind of going at the same thing. I understood the underlying concept. So with this topic of creatively answering cards, I go ahead and mark cards that I don't think are very well written or don't help me too much. Command 3 is how I mark my cards green and it shows up with a little green flag in the right corner when you're actually answering the question. And it kind of signals to me that I should just look at this card and not actively recall it, because potentially the card's just not testing info that well, or I just don't like how it's asking something. Or it could be ambiguous. It's a good idea to come up with a code for what your flag colors mean so you don't forget. I'll put an example of this on the screen, but the Anki deck comes with red, meaning like you don't need to, like really easy cards, like you don't need to keep them in your rotation for very long. Blue I kind of use for cards that are in the step 2 deck that they labeled as duplicates, so I tend not to unlock those cards if I see blue. So green is for these cards that I just want to look at and not actively recall. Yeah, and I don't really have anything for orange. Maybe I do, but I don't remember. So yeah, and I think this green labeling can apply in this case where a card is super easy but kind of ambiguous. So this card, many agents used in hypertensive emergencies are potent vasodilators. Okay, that's a really easy card. I mean, I don't know, it was just kind of ambiguous. So I went ahead and labeled this card green. So thank you for watching. My bird Turdy Birdie says hi. If you're thinking about going to a medical school, Boonshop School of Medicine, amazing school, have a blessed day. Thank you so much. Good luck with your studying and change the world.